a lot of Hispanics have constantly voted for Democrats because it's a norm. Because my grandparents told me, because my teachers told me, because the TV told me. And apparently, there's this notion that they actually want to help the Hispanic community. We've given them opportunity time and time again, like immigration. And unfortunately, nothing gets resolved. And they're seeing the direction of this country when it comes to affordability and our economy and public safety. They're the ones in charge, at least here at the state level too, right? And they see it's just getting progressively worse.
So, what is the newcomer's look to Colorado government, particularly down at the State House? We're going to find out. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications. And find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. Ryan Gonzalez, new member to the legislature. Do you dress like this every day?
I try to at least.
Really? Is that your at-home outfit?
No, I wouldn't say necessarily at home, but definitely more for the occasion for sure. Yeah.
That is a great green. It's not quite leprechaun green, but you'd be okay in St. Patty's Day.
Oh yeah, I blend into the chairs and stuff on the floor. So
All your suits like that?
some of them, yeah.
Can I borrow them sometime?
If you can fit in them, I don't see why not. Just make sure you
Yeah, I
return
don't
them
think
to
it's
me
gonna happen.
after they're dry cleaned. But yeah.
Tell me about winning the seat. That was a real takeover seat for Republicans. Who did you beat? Where is it? And what was the margin of victory?
Yeah, so I represent House District 50, which is in Weld County, encompasses East Greeley, Evans, and Garden City. It was held by Democrats for 20 years, consecutive years. And for a while, it was the only blue seat in Weld County that Democrats had.
For 20 years, because I think of Weld County, I think all red, all oil and gas country, but not so. 20 years for Democrats.
Yeah, so this is obviously the more metropolitan part of the county. So as you know, when you go to certain counties, metropolitan cities vote more Dem, right? It's just kind of a habit. So I actually went against Mary Young, which is the state treasurer's wife, our current state treasurer, and the margin of victory was 563 votes.
What we call in the profession a gnat's ass. That was a tight vote.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm just curious, how did other Republicans do in the same area, namely Trump or the state senator in that election? How did it go?
So I can tell you, just looking off of the demographics and past voter history, the Republicans tend not to necessarily win those. And if they do win them, it's usually by a very small margin. So Barb Kirkmeyer won CD8 and 22 by about 190 votes. Trump, we're still waiting on the numbers specifically for 2024. But I think we did outperform Trump in that district, as well as outperforming our current state senator who represents that district as well.
All right, so that's a real turn because it's not what you call a real Trumpy stronghold. Trump did better than he did before. But still, why do you think voters in this Weld County district were ready to switch after 20 years of Democratic representation? I mean, and again, it's not a sea change. It's still very tenuous, but that was a sizable defeat for Democrats.
Yeah, I think we didn't really prop up a very strong enough candidate. Not saying the other candidates in the past weren't strong, but I think appealing to the district components of it, it's nearly half Hispanic. Greeley itself, it's the median age is about 31. So, more younger type of person to appeal.
And you, now just old enough to vote at 18, was really an amazing victory. How old are you?
Yeah, so I just turned 30 on Christmas. So I was 29 when they called the race, yeah.
I was young once. Oh, those were the days. Anyway, so talk to me about the racial makeup in the district. As a Hispanic, did that help bridge a gap that Mary Young didn't have or others didn't have?
I think it did. You see a lot of it, so nearly half Hispanic. Just because it's half Hispanic doesn't mean it's 50% of the vote. But a lot of people in there, whether they're residents or, young and trying to reach that age of being able to vote, really understanding people at the very ground level, going door to door, going to these events, community outreach, and just necessarily talking about what they want to hear, the issues at hand, and speaking Spanish as well. I think that's also a big factor. A lot of the districts speak Spanish, a lot of Hispanic businesses and the like, and they haven't really had somebody who can at least identify with or make a connection to the culture.
It's got to be more than just being Hispanic. My sense is if you were a Hispanic Democrat, you'd probably bring in the same Mary Young type numbers. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm seeing nationwide, and I'm also seeing in Colorado, that black men and Hispanics are trending more Republican. In the southern part of the state, where also large Hispanic representation, it is really turning into a new type of conservatism. There's a Trump aspect, particularly down in Pueblo County, that is growing, and it's growing around the country. I'm going to superimpose that Democrats are losing Hispanic voters to the Republican Party. I want to know why. You can probably talk more about your district, but in general, what do you think?
I think that a lot of Hispanics have constantly voted for Democrats because it's a norm. Because my grandparents told me, because my teachers told me, because the TV told me. And apparently there's this notion that they actually want to help the Hispanic community. We've given them opportunity time and time again, like immigration. And unfortunately, nothing gets resolved. And they're seeing the direction of this country when it comes to affordability and our economy and public safety. They're the ones in charge, at least here at the state level too, right? And they see it's just getting progressively worse. And so Republicans, we have tried to message our policies, kind of conveying it more effectively by doing Hispanic outreach. And, the problem is Republicans haven't really tried. They give it up as a loss that Hispanics are just going to vote Democrat. But if we don't try, then that gives the other side an opportunity to constantly win the support, if that makes sense.
You've talked about immigration. I want to dive into that. There's a conception, I think, that, well, if you're Hispanic, you've got to be much more easy on the border, that you are pleased with the Biden approach to open borders, that you would not like the Trump approach of closed borders with tighter immigration laws. Is that the fair thing to say? Or, because I've seen a lot of particularly multi-generational families in Colorado who are Hispanic, they're not wild about open borders where criminals just walk across.
Yeah, this was an issue that came up at the door. And mind you, this was something coming from the mouths of people who are residents, people who became citizens, people who came here the right way. They don't like what's happening, that they had to wait years in line, that they had to go through the process. And for people to come and cut in front of the line and get handouts and get all this assistance without having to pay for it or wait for it or earn it or work for it, they're not happy with that. They're not happy specifically with people who are coming here illegally and committing actual crimes. You can argue they broke the law when they crossed into the country legally. Yes, that's true. But we're talking specifically about people who are out here intentionally harming others when it comes to safety and, theft and other crimes that these people come that give, this whole notion that immigration is just bad. They want immigration. We just want it the right way. We want people to come here, use the process, apply, pay their dues, all that stuff, and be able to work and pay taxes. That's what a lot of them want. That's what a lot of them at the door have gone through. So they don't like basically you're treating, immigrants who came here legally versus illegally different. They want consistency.
Right. And I am stereotyping here, but it seems like the left, who loves identity politics so much, it's about how many boxes you can check. Now, a guy like you checks a couple boxes on the other side. One, a Hispanic conservative, and two, somebody who's young. Because we're seeing that our leaders in the country, and you could argue in the state, getting long in the tooth and aren't connected with a new age of voters. And this idea that we just take minorities for granted. Democrats take minorities for granted, that they want handouts, they want to be part of the dependency state, and that's not the case. Tell me a little bit about growing up here. Why are you a Republican? Why are you a conservative and not the other way around? You went to public schools.
Yeah, I sure did. I'm a product of public schools. I got my degree from UNC in business, and I went to Northwich High School in Greeley. I graduated with the STEM magnet program there while I was in high school. So I think for me, working since I was 15 years old and not having to depend on handouts or assistance. I grew up in a very low income household, so I decided to work early and sacrifice athletic sports to actually not have to have the burden pressed to my mom, who had raised 3 kids on her own. And knowing that we can get by if you just work for it, there's that victimhood mentality that I refuse to accept, because a lot of times it's just in your head. You know, there's this notion from the Democrats that, well, this country oppresses people of color. It's inherently racist. The system is designed to keep people oppressed.
Is it inherently racist?
No, it's not.
Is it systematically racist?
No, I think there's people that run the system that are inherently racist. And I think what we're seeing today is more polite racism when it comes to, well, you're good, you're just not good enough because of the color of your skin.
I like that term, polite racism. What do you mean by it?
You know, it's very discreet in a way, but it's kind of like the truth hides in plain sight. When people say, oh, well, you know, you're going to get deported because of the color of your skin, because of your last name, because you're Hispanic, you know, you should be a Democrat. And these other connotations that come with it that, well, you know, your own, you know, people that get deported, who's going to clean, who's going to pick the crops? You know, when you assume that that's all immigrants are good for, that is in and of itself racist.
I think it was George W. who used the term that was the soft bigotry of low expectations, that we don't expect much from you. I really want to talk real briefly about your job in the factory, because it used to be Democrats were the ones that worked in manufacturing. They were the ones who worked on the line. They were the ones who understood manufacturing. And now it seems that more and more Colorado Democrats come from the elite arts. These are people who are in academia. They're computer programmers. They work under fluorescent lights in cubicles, but they don't roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. What do you do for a living?
Yeah, so prior to this, I was in manufacturing at JM Smuckers in Longmont for almost 2 years.
They make jelly and
technician.
jams, right?
Yeah, we make the sandwiches. So the Uncrustables that you see at the stores, we make those.
Those sandwiches that are peanut butter and jelly enclosed.
Yep.
Yeah, they're great.
They are, and
They
they
might not be great for you, but they're great.
You know, people could eat them, especially because we make different flavors. You know, honey, jazz. We have raspberry now. There's strawberry. There's grape. There's wheat bread.
You worked in the factory.
Yes.
What was your job there?
So I was a technician, so just on the assembly line in sandwich making. So there was the bakery that made the bread, and then sandwich making, which put it all together.
It was a bunch of big machines, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That squirt jelly and jam and peanut butter and squeeze things together and get them packaged, get them into bigger boxes and get them out the door.
That's right.
How many do you make a day?
So the plant makes an average about 2 million a day.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And I would say about 60% of the people that work in Longmont, that plant, live in Greeley, where I live.
Did you start as a technician?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so you've been there. This is hands-on work. You're working with the machines.
Yeah.
For you and your coworkers in that plant, what's really important in Colorado? I mean, what is driving people to go, I'm going to vote for this guy instead of that guy?
Yeah.
And talk to me about the coworkers, because
Yeah.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. You know, sometimes these conversations would get brought up, especially when I was running for office at the time. They're like, well, I've never met someone that's in this field. What's going on with this? What do you think
And
of
you were running while you're still working
While
there,
I was
right?
still working, yeah. You know, I had a campaign. Sometimes I'd leave early. Sometimes I'd come in later.
Did you ever put your little campaign sticker in the packages when they were going out?
No, I didn't want to get in trouble, right? Because it's all political stuff. But I think the number one issue that people discuss was affordability. It's too expensive to live here. It's too expensive to afford things, a home, a car, energy prices, grocery prices. You see now the prices of eggs. At least back then in the campaign trail, it wasn't eggs, at least just yet. But it was insurance, it was crime, it was property taxes, it was cost of living, it was just regulations. A lot of things that drive the costs up that just can't make it affordable to live here. And you have a lot of these people who work overtime just to try to get by.
You would have these conversations, I'm assuming, with the coworkers.
Yes.
Who do they blame for that? And I mean, I can go through this and I can give you the reasons why. I look at home affordability and I lay it on the feet of growth control first and foremost. I see it on property taxes and then the insurance, the inability to buy condominiums here because of our construction defects law. And it's just everything that makes Colorado so expensive. It's not because the altitude is high, it's because the government is everywhere and getting worse. The high cost of energy is suffocating everything we do. And I'm curious if the guys working on the line with you, if all that adds up for them. Or do they go, no, this guy says he's going to lower my cost of living by giving me some sort of handout, compared to somebody going, this green energy stuff is costing us too much?
You know, it was pretty evenly split, I would say. Some people thought that it was the big, rich, powerful corporations, capitalism, bad. You know, these people that were selfish, all about profits at the expense of average workers, exploiting them, not paying them higher wages or more benefits, in bed with the state, you know, that they were just weaponizing the state to make it harder for other companies that do the same to even have a chance. And then there was those that understood that government is, like you just said, too involved in everything. Regulations, more laws, driving down innovation, slowing down productivity, prices increasing, costs, just everything across the board, and as it gets gradually worse. So some would see it, there's too much government. Others would say it's the big and powerful, which is why we're in the situation we're in now.
It's odd because when I was your age, which was half my life ago, if you worked at a factory, it was almost lockstep you voted for the Labor Democrat. And that was just the way it was here in Colorado, in places like where you work. If you were Hispanic, you were a lockstep Democrat. But there was something different back then. Being a Democrat was a working man's party. That you saw that guys like Roy Romer, who sold John Good farm equipment, he was a Democrat. They got it. But it wasn't this harsh elitism that we've been seeing for the last decade coming out of state government and large cities. It wasn't this, we know what's best for you. It wasn't this very socialistic idea of government can run everything. I find it fascinating that a working class Hispanic guy from a factory can win as a Republican. That tells me the culture in Colorado is really changing. And if I were a Democratic strategist, I'd look at this and I'd be scared as hell.
Yeah, and you're right when you said times have changed. I think right now what we're seeing is a lot of these people with advanced degrees and, you know, researchers, PhDs, whatever it is, because of their expertise.
The planners of society.
Yes, that they have our interests at heart, but they forget to think about the individual versus in the name of common good, right? Plurality. And so I think that in many cases, people see it as, well, for the greater good, to help people, the compassionate humanitarian issue. You see a lot of that. Well, you know, you're in the situation, for example, low-income people. Well, you can't get by because you're being oppressed, and there's these big, powerful state people, rich billionaires that are keeping you there and exploiting you there, where you can't do it on your own. So you need government to come in here and help you, because they don't trust people to get by on their own, and they don't trust people to make their own decisions. And I think there's the disconnect, and you see a lot of the victim mentality where they turn to government as a way to kind of rid us of these problems, when it's the exact opposite of what is really happening.
When I see that the guys who turn wrenches for a living, like you, are turning towards republicanism instead of the elite harshness of progressivism, it really tells me things have changed and the parties have changed, and that it's, for me, it's the reason Trump won, is that he can connect better with working people than the elites. And I don't know if that's true or not in your place, but are you guys unionized at that Smucker's plant?
Nope.
one of the big things you're going to be fighting this legislative session is something to get rid of our Labor Peace Act. This is something that's been around for 80 years, saying if Smucker's, your factory, wants to unionize, you got to get at least 75% of the workers to say yes. I think your House of Representatives is going to pass something that gets rid of that.
Yep.
Is that good or bad?
I think that's bad because I think that's more control for unions, and that's what they want, right? I think people need to also follow the money. Who funds these people? Is there some sort of gain to what they're trying to do? Whether it's the environmentalist or whether it's energy, I mean, you see it across all sides. It's who is this going to benefit? Is this really going to help the people that they claim to help, or is this going to only hurt them by, sometimes if they have to force unions through a small group of people versus the 75%, is that really, a democracy like a lot of these people claim to be? We are a mix. We shouldn't let only a select few determine the outcome for an entire facility.
Well, they'd argue, 75% isn't a select few and 50 plus 1 isn't a select few, but Colorado should be a right-to-work state. It should be something where if you want to unionize, go unionize. But if you want my money out of my paycheck, I've got to approve it, and you've got to ask me every year to do so. And that's what I hope you guys would pass. Do you think most of your coworkers would look at this end of the Labor Peace Act and go, yep, make it easier for people to coerce money out of other workers' paychecks? That's good for me.
No, I could tell you at least where I was at in Smucker's, the idea of a union was talked about, but the response was more negative than it was positive.
Why?
I think the way things are specifically at that plan, it's not bad where they feel they need to unionize, but they also understand the aspect of dues. So they don't want these dues coming out of their paycheck. They don't want to be forced into a union. Some of these people want to opt out. There should be the option to opt out, right? Goes back to the right to work. I've talked to some unions, and, their issue with right to work is when someone comes to be part of their, wherever they work, they shouldn't benefit from what the unions offer for free. Does that make sense? Their members have to pay for it.
Right.
They don't like people coming in here with right to work where they have to use their resources that they don't pay for, versus unionized dues. And I think in my specific plan, they just saw union as being more intrusive. And essentially, you never know who this is going to really benefit. Who's in charge of this union? Is it something that's made up at the plant? Is this going to have adverse effects? A lot of these questions came up.
In America, we have the right to free association. We get to decide who we associate with. And when out of coercion, somebody says, you are going to give money to them for political causes you might not like, we have a natural repulsion for that, and we should. It's one of the reasons why in Colorado, public sector employees, they can unionize, but they cannot have their dues coerced out of their paycheck without their permission. It's a crucial bit of protection for the workers. And if a group wants to unionize, but you have to convince a worker to give up their money. You cannot coerce them. That's the big difference. And I think the same reason you won is that people in Colorado are getting tired of the coercion. You have to buy your energy like this. You can't buy this appliance. You can't get a gas stove anymore. You have to live here. You can't live there. That you can say this, but you can't use these words. And I think the reaction of the smarter people who know what's right for you, I think people just get it on a gut level. And the whole Trump phenomenon is a middle finger to that. In a more local way, the idea that a Democratic district for the first time in 20 years would get a young guy like you, I think says it in spades.
Yeah, like what you said, people are just tired of it. They're tired of the attacks. They're tired of stuff not getting done. They're tired of the smears, all the negativity. They're tired of business as usual.
How do people in your district feel about woke, about the pronoun police telling you that you have to call a singular person a plural pronoun like they?
I can tell you from all the doors I hit and all the people I talked to in my district, that was something that never really came up.
Really?
I think their main concerns were affordability, education, crime, and taxes, property taxes, income tax, Tabor. Tabor is something too that I definitely highlighted on the campaign trail, and it's something that even a lot of our newer Colorado residents don't know exists. And I think that's something that resonates and it sparks a conversation. It's very popular, but those specific issues you mentioned never came up on the
Yeah, I
campaign
found that
trail.
fascinating. All right, give me your impression as a new guy going down to the state capitol. This is a new experience for you. It's a bizarre place. What were your first reactions when you're there and you've had a few months under your belt? What surprises you the most?
When we're having some of these discussions on second readings of these bills, a lot of people just tend to zone out. They disappear, they go to the bathroom, they're talking to lobbyists, they're on their phones, they're having side conversations, whatever it is. And even though we don't agree with some of these bills, understanding the different sides, when it comes to discussing policy, they may not like it, but at least take your job serious enough to sit down and digest it all, because this is what the voters sent here.
So you
sent
think
here
there's a
to do.
callousness to the process?
I think a lot of them just don't necessarily abide by what they should.
What should they?
They have to take their job more serious when it comes to hard conversations, the opposing views. Being in the minority, you're forced to listen to it. But even if we were in the majority, I would still take time to listen to the minority. What are they thinking and why?
What do you like most about this new gig?
Being able to meet people from all walks of life, different industries, getting to know businesses, and just expanding my personal network. I think that helps me get by. I have a great team behind me that I've met, and I've met some great lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. They exist. We're not just out to be enemies from the get-go. I genuinely believe, at least in this point in time, their intentions, they want to do good.
What do you dislike the most? It could be even something minor.
It would be nice to have a very set calendar, not push stuff to the side, delay stuff. Even some of the more controversial stuff like the price gouging bill we'll be seeing soon, Senate Bill 3 when that comes up to the House
That's
floor.
the gun ban bill.
Yes, I think we need to not delay some of these bills and have the conversations now, because then they're ramming stuff at the end when the 120 days are running out. That's where my concern
That
is.
is where I would like to reduce the number of days from the mandatory 120 down to 10, because everything gets done in the last 10 days. All the deals get cut. And what really surprises me after watching the process so long is how things are just cooked, that these things are done behind closed doors. Republicans have said that their caucuses are going to remain open so people can take a look and see what you're doing. Democrats won't do the same thing. They passed a law that exempts them from the open meetings requirements of Colorado. And I just find that to be so truly hateful to the process.
I say the same thing. And I just feel that the mainstream media should have fought harder on this one, because they could have had the power to, influence the narrative. And this benefits them, being able to get the inside scoop and open meetings, the Sunshine Law. And the media didn't fight it. They didn't fight it as hard as they could have, that they should have, that they would, woulda, shoulda, coulda, all that stuff. The media did it. And it's very disappointing to see, because they treat different sides differently.
How do you mean?
They tend to have more bias. I wouldn't call it fake news. I'd call it more misguided, bias news, where it's more commentary than it is journalism.
That's from your point of view, seeing it down there.
From seeing it down there, I feel that that's what it is. I think Democrats get a pat on the back, slap on the wrist. Republicans, you say something wrong or selective edit, right? And they'll twist it and distort it. It's sad. It's the way it is.
Your example of ending the open meetings is a perfect one. That this is where the media in unison should have screamed hell no and led the battle against it. And instead there was we kind of don't like this. Yeah. However, anytime there's some Republican dysfunction, and there's a lot of Republican dysfunction, it's a major story which pushes out other stories from the limited ink space or airwaves. But oddly, while you're not in a technical super minority, I don't want to break your heart, Ryan, but you're kind of irrelevant. There are so few Republicans there, you cannot pass anything. You cannot stop anything. But yet, whenever there's a spitting match between two Republicans, it gets all the media. So the war between Democrats, which is growing and growing and growing, they don't seem to cover that.
No, and I can tell you, you can even sense there's factions in the Democratic majority. You know, there's the more progressive wing, there's the more moderate wing, there's the more old school Democrat type of wing. Different factions, and you have them in the Republican Party too. You hear about it more though, right? Openly, you see it on Facebook, social media, the comments. They go after one another. Democrats are pretty good at sticking together and keeping it behind closed doors. So I can tell from some of the stuff
And then when
I've
they
heard,
have closed door meetings,
yeah,
then it's easier to hide it still.
it's easier. But I can tell from some of the stuff I've seen and some of the stuff I've heard, very contentious conversations happen behind closed doors with Democrats.
Let's wrap this up. You just started. I'm assuming you don't regret your decision.
I knew what I signed up for.
And you're already running for re-election, I'm assuming. You've got to be thinking about how you're going to raise money for the next campaign.
Well, yeah, we're kind of working the kinks out. So yeah,
Working the kinks out.
Yeah.
And you've probably got to be doing this calculation of which constituency groups can I offend, which ones can't I? Because if you do your job well, you're going to anger a lot of people.
Yes. And I can tell a lot of Democrats are not happy because of who I beat. You know, she's well liked in the district, a teacher, so the education people were not happy when she did not win. The Democrat machine.
So this was also a big loss for the teachers union.
Yes, and to the whole machine with the state treasurer and everything. I mean, in a way, it just makes him seem not as strong.
Colorado is still a wildly progressive, wildly blue, elitist state. But your little victory here, your little upset, could become something that spreads to other districts for a lot of the same reasons. So you're a canary in the coal mine on this, and I hope you do well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for spending some time with me.
No, hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And you didn't even touch your whiskey. You're such a good young legislator.
I know. We just gotta wait for the grand finale. Keeps you motivated, right?
It's also because you came in drunk and you didn't need it.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but yeah.
Because it would be a lie.
Hopefully, you clip that part out.
Thank you. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.